I'm delighted to present Michael Fauscette, Group Vice President Software Business Solutions at IDC, who is going to talk today about innovation management, leveraging social technologies for competitive edge. Welcome, Michael, please.
Great. Thanks, Darius. So I think that no business person today would be particularly surprised if I put a slide up like this that says, over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, particularly, we've all faced some fairly significant changes from an economic perspective. I mean, the global economy is particularly volatile and has been really since the crash in 2008, and it seems like there's one crisis after another. We've seen, for a lot of industries, slow growth or no growth, and from an IT perspective, which part of my role at IDC is really looking at software and the software industry. So we've seen tons of consolidation there. Large companies, buying up innovative small companies and consolidating. So certainly a change in landscape there. And then, just a change in general from the, demographics that we've had in the past. I mean, an aging baby boomer population, a digital native millennial population that's really coming into the workforce. And then also from my perspective, another kind of shift is what I call Generation C. So we have this kind of non-age bounded new generation of employees and customers and partners that are connected and behave very differently than they have in the past. Now, if you add to that, some view into kind of how things have changed based on the internet. If you think of what happened in the 90s and has driven on into business and become much more important to business, this idea that that connectivity has really changed everything. So, what do I mean? Well, I mean that it's opened up new economic models. It's opened up new business models. It's opened up, new ways to leverage value and even the place where value comes from in a lot of businesses. I mean, think, 10, 15, 20 years ago, who would have thought that you could build a multi-billion-dollar business like Google, who, at least until recently didn't sell anything, but really provided that, connectivity and search on the internet. Think of the changes from a technology perspective, the fact that we now have cloud-based computing, we now have all these cloud-based computing resources available for businesses and access to computing power that would have never been available in the past. And then socially, and this is perhaps the most interesting and challenging piece of this, the idea that the social web has really come into play in the last 10, 12 years and changed the way we interact. It's changed the way that we can build influence. It's changed the location of influence in a lot of ways and created a population of this Generation C, this connected generation that have a megaphone, have a publishing platform, have a way at access to distribution of information that they would have never had before. So, all of these different changes really have had a dramatic impact on business. So, if we think of traditional business, and what do I mean by that? I mean the industrial age business, and we're now moving past that into an information age, and we talk about that a lot. But think about where we come from. We come from this hierarchical structure. We come from this top-down management. A place where knowledge and control of knowledge was power. Innovation happened in silos, and there was no end-to-end innovation process. In fact, we really, in a lot of businesses, didn't talk about necessarily how innovation came about, and in fact, you might say in some businesses it was almost accidental or magic, and there was no particular plan, or if it was planned, it was something that existed in very specific silos. And then, now we have these these four forces of industry transformation that are really starting to play into the way businesses operate. You know, things like cloud computing, things like the fact that on a mobile device we have access to enterprise resources and the capability, you know, that's gone way beyond our capability to just do email like we had, you know, 10, 12 years ago. Now we have access and can do very complicated tasks on tablets, on smartphones. We have this area of business change called social business, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as we tie this together into innovation and how we can start to think of innovation in a different way. And then we have what we call big data and analytics, and I admit that's one of the terms from a technology perspective that I think is perhaps a bit misleading. And you know, the data is really important, don't get me wrong, and we certainly do have big data, but doing something with big data is not necessarily a relevant thing until you can take that data and put it in context with something and use that data to drive some specific activity. So in other words, can I take big data, turn it into smart data that helps me drive better business decisions? Or, you know, can I use it to build a business model that gives me, you know, insight into customer behavior? Or, you know, any number of places that we see the use of this is very transformative. But it's not just this massive data, which is just overwhelming, frankly, and not beneficial to anyone. So if you take the four forces, or this, you know, technology shifts and the impact that connectivity has, and you start to think about cultural shifts, so, you know, behaviors online like networks, and how networks help you build trust relationships in a very different way from the way you did in the past. The idea that that, you know, now people go to their network first for advice, they go to their network for research. You know, only 10, 12 years ago, a company could easily control the message that went into, you know, the on the internet, because most people did research by going to a destination, to a site, and and that's really shifted now, and more people go to trusted sources, and those trusted sources are not, you know, just the company controlled information, but they're information that, you know, is trust filtered through a network of people, and really people are the curators of that and the source of that knowledge. And then shift of influence and relevance. I mean, I mentioned this before, but, you know, you have the capability, any individual has a capability to reach millions and millions of people. I mean, think of, you know, a simple social web example of something that went viral a few years ago, when United Airlines had an issue where they had broken Dave Carroll's, a gentleman's name, a musician's guitar, and he tried for a year to get it replaced, and successfully, and then in a matter of days it solved the problem. How did he solve it? Well, he recorded a song on YouTube, and that song had over 5 million hits in the first day, and United then, of course, had, you know, reacted to that and took care of his problem. So, you know, the idea that a Canadian musician, not that well known, could post something online, it could go viral, and he could influence the behavior of a major corporation and influence that very effectively, is something that really shows the difference in the way influence could be used today, and frankly the source of influence. And then changing expectations, and this is, you know, you hear people talk about the consumerization of IT. I think that's really, you know, consumerization of IT really boils down to a couple of things. One, the source of technology innovation shifted, but more so, and probably the most important thing, people's expectations have shifted. So, you know, now if you go to a company and you want to get support, or you want to provide input, or you want to provide information to that company, you want to do it in the way, you know, when, where, and how you want to do it, and how you choose to do it, and on the network and the source of the communication device that you choose, not how the company mandates. So the days of forcing you into an IVR, you know, that's fine if that's a preferred way for you to exchange information with the company. But if it's not, you're going to get frustrated really quickly, and then you're going to go somewhere else. So if you think of that leading to business change, so, you know, now we have this hyper-connected, global, very competitive environment in a situation where business models and products and pricing can shift overnight, and into a model where companies really do have to be focused around innovation today, and they have to be innovation driven, and mobile as well. So we have this mobile economy, this mobile access to information. All of these things together really give a very different opportunity for business, particularly when you think about how you could tie together innovation. So what do I mean by innovation? So that's probably the first place to start. There's several kinds of innovation, and I've been in the software business for most of my career. So for me, thinking of innovation, there's really two kind of basic ideas. One is continuous innovation, and the other is disruptive or discontinuous innovation. And continuous innovation is that ongoing improvement of product over a period of time. And this is a really typical model for large software vendors, where disruptive innovation might not be the best choice for their investment of research dollars, but continuous innovation is the lifeblood of the company. They need a maintenance stream, they have upgrades, they incrementally improve the product over time to make it better for their customers. So they are innovative, but they're innovative in a different way, versus disruptive innovation that is really a game changer that changes the market. And those are certainly rare, but they do happen. And often today those happen in smaller, more nimble companies, but in tech particularly, and probably happens in a lot of other industries, that disruptive innovation very well ends up in the hands of a larger company a lot of times because of the consolidation, or because of the ability to take that, buy that innovation and use that as a real market block into that area. So continuous and disruptive, very important when you think of innovation. The other place that innovation, and I mentioned this a little bit before, this idea that certainly we've had product or service innovation for the history of business. I mean, that's the point of it. You innovate around what you're trying to produce, and that innovation helps you gain market share. But there's also this idea, particularly because of the internet, that you can now innovate very specifically around business models in ways that you perhaps couldn't in the past. Now, not that business model innovation is new, because it's certainly not, but the capability to do this, the ways you can do this have opened up greatly because of the connectivity, and because of the web, and because of the opportunity that creates. So product service innovation, business model innovation, and that can happen in a continuous or disruptive sort of model. Now, from a business perspective today, at least most of the businesses I work with, when they think of innovation, they usually have very specific siloed process around it, if they have a process at all. And frankly, most companies that I talk to don't really have, or haven't defined very specifically, what an innovation process would look like. They more have some product development or research group that kind of drives that, but it's in a very disconnected way. And if you think about that, the capabilities today, that's a very isolated way. So customers, partners, all the other employees are really kept outside the innovation silo. And the innovation silo then functions, of course, but it functions in a very limited way, and it doesn't access, or it doesn't take advantage of some of the opportunities that are created by this connectivity that we've talked about. So if connectivity opens up opportunity to tie people together, and to tie people together across all sorts of different boundaries, then couldn't we design an innovation process that perhaps leverages a broader section of the population? So rather than having innovation reside inside a silo, is there a way that we could start to think about this in a different way, and start to think about integration in an integrated way? So if we think about this across your whole business, it opens up some really interesting opportunities if you have the technology and the process. So it's not just technology, and it's not just process. And if you take that and you tie that together and build a process that leverages the opportunity to bring other parties, other stakeholders into this, you have a capability then to build an innovation process that uses and leverages very directly your customers, that leverages very directly all your employees, and perhaps leverages your partners, leverages your suppliers, wherever you believe from a business perspective, and this certainly changes based on the way the business is laid out, but where you believe you can tie things together and involve this population, can you then in fact use that and leverage that to drive more innovation into the business? And it really comes from this structured concept of connecting all the pieces together and doing that in a process-driven way. Now, let me go into this a little more in a more specific way, because I think this sounds a little nebulous when you think about this way. So think of it, think of innovation as a continuous process, and it's tied together. So there's a collaboration envelope that wraps around innovation, but there's specific steps or processes that you can design and technology that you can use to tie that together to leverage and actually build this continuous process. And we'll go into this in some detail, but just to give you the basics. So the innovation process, the innovation management process really starts with getting ideas. Now, in the past, what did you do to get ideas? Well, they came from your product management group. Perhaps they came from, some executives or other people involved in the company, and then you may vet them in some way, so you develop those ideas. How did you do that? Well, usually, you had some product marketing function that maybe did some focus groups, did some limited kind of trial around a product idea, concept, and tried to evaluate that as best they could and look at things like manufacturability and profitability and projections and that sort of thing. Pull that into the manufacturing, the producing phase, and then in some businesses, not all, push it then out into the customer community and take some feedback and analyze that feedback and hopefully improve the product. But again, these were not really tied together in a long innovation process. There are all these handoffs, and there's no end-to-end system. Now, move to what we could see today, or what we could do today, and we have the capability to build a collaborative environment and use enterprise social level tools to connect directly with your customers, to connect all your employees together, to connect with your partners. And how does that work? Well, if a simple example is something that Starbucks did, and a lot of us probably know Starbucks and go to Starbucks for coffee. And if you do, you probably remember in the past when you got your coffee, you had to be really careful even when you put the cover on it, the coffee would spill out a little hole if you weren't mindful of how you had that coffee. Well, Starbucks built an idea sourcing portal. They built a community for their customers to interact with them and suggest ideas for them, and then they could rank those ideas, and the top-rated ideas could then be brought into the company and used to improve their business. Well, so what came out of that? Well, what came out of it is a really simple thing, but frankly, I love it. I think it's an exceptionally innovative idea. It's the little green stir stick that now plugs the little hole on the top of the cup top and prevents the splashing that used to happen if you weren't careful with the cup. Now, again, simple idea, but that idea came from a customer and was voted up as the #1 idea in that round of idea collection, and Starbucks took that and they turned that into a product that, while it's not something they sell, it's something that improves customer satisfaction dramatically. And it's a very simple thing. Probably, they already were spending money on coffee stirrers anyway, so it's just a different design. But if you think about that sort of power, it seems like a simple thing, but where do you get ideas like that? Well, you get ideas like that from people who are using the product who really have direct knowledge of where you have problems and where you could improve those problems. So, let's look at this process more. Well, if you think of idea sourcing or sourcing your ideas, what can you do? Well, today, we've now built customer community type tools, technology that helps you deploy and build an ecosystem of partners, customers, and you can certainly tie it into employees. And I'll talk about specifically around employees, a framework called Enterprise Social Networks in a minute. But this idea that we have tools that now help you reach those customers or reach those partners and collect that idea and have the capability to rate that idea, discuss that idea, and pull out the ideas that bubble to the top. So in other words, crowdsourcing ideas that certainly leverage a broader population. So rather than a very limited silo for ideas or innovation, you now have opened this up across a broad section of people, and you have the capability then to reach people that you would have never brought into the process before and get ideas that you would have never had access to before because you simply had no way to collect them. So that's the first part, sourcing it, and then having a systematic way to collect those ideas, and it has to be visible. It has to be transparent. So, if I suggest an idea to Starbucks or Dell or, any number of companies that are doing this now, I want to be able to go back and check on my idea because I'm connected to your company, which, by the way, also increases my, engagement with you and loyalty to you because you're now involving me in your product development process, and have the transparency to show me that this idea that I submitted, it got voted really high or it didn't get voted high at all. In fact, everybody else thought it was a really dumb idea. So, at least I know from a personal standpoint what happened to it, and then keep that transparency through the whole process. So ideas that are selected, that are brought into the process, you can then, take and continue to improve that over time. Now, we do a social business survey every year. We've done it for the last 3.5 years. Of what people are using social tools for, and I thought it was interesting to put this in here because, and this is a fairly extensive survey, we just took this out of the field in June, 700 companies, North America, and out of those companies we asked, why are you using social tools, or why are you conducting social media, social networking initiatives for business? And today, although this certainly was not true 3 years ago, but today the number one reason is to gather feedback on the company's product or services. So companies are really starting to leverage this, and by the way, to put this in context, 67% of these companies that we surveyed had done some kind of social project in the last 12 months. So they're using social tools for business, whether it's customer facing or employee engaging, and they see that the real value here is tying this together and and having product feedback come directly from outside the company as well as inside the company. And then you'll notice a couple of other high-ranked items as well. So respond to customer partner inquiries. A lot of companies are also using these communities to help service their customer base as well. Communicate with partners and suppliers, communicate with customers, and then brand awareness, which goes back to the kind of social marketing that started the whole trend probably 4.5-5 years ago. So now this has shifted quite a bit, and we're starting to see companies really engaging around this idea of leveraging the population of their customers to help drive this innovation process. So if you move to the next phase, then if we have an idea, so we sourced the idea, it was ranked high by the population, so now we need a way to evaluate those ideas because it's a business proposition and we're not going to just randomly make anything that the customers suggest. So we tie this together with a project management system that continues your open and transparent way of doing business, but it involves your entire team, and a lot of times when I say team, that could easily be partners as well. So it might not just be internal, and it's certainly not just the product development organization or product design organization, but that could leverage all your employees, and it could continue to create innovation as you involve more of the population. And then use the power of crowds or wisdom of crowds to help you really find those ideas in this large number of ideas that come in that are most relevant or most interesting, most popular, and you can take those and then evaluate them. But it's still a decision, it's still a business decision, so you still have to do your, is this idea possible? Does it make sense? Is it going to be something that we can actually manufacture? Can we do something with it? I mean, there's certainly a sanity check to this, but at the same time you've involved lots of people to get the best ideas, and then you have a final decision point that is probably still in your product development or product design or product innovation organization. They make the final decisions, but do that in a very transparent way in the system so that the people now that are stakeholders in this, so that goes all the way out to the customer, can see what decisions you made and why you made them. And then once you've done that, you have to tie this into a seamless process. So again, a handoff into design, so you can then design that product and then execute, in other words, manufacture it or make it or deliver it if it's a service. And that idea of seamless integration, and this really ties into the whole concept of social PLM, is that now we're looking at how do we do this by connecting all these different systems. In the past, we think of these systems and they end up looking like silos, just like the rest of the business looked like a silo. Well, those days really have to go away now, because now we have to think of this as a continuous process and not as a siloed system. So the systems have to be tied together, integrated, so that those handoffs happen in a much different way. And I mean, I'm actually ex-Autodesk executive from several years ago, and I still remember trying to work through the problems with my customers. I ran global consulting there, and working through the problems with my customers of the fact that the design system didn't talk to the engineering system, and the engineering system didn't talk to the manufacturing system, and they had these handoffs, and a lot of mistakes were made in those handoffs. And now we have the capability to tie those systems together. We can eliminate the problems created in those handoffs. We can eliminate rework and problems in manufacturing and changes and manage changes in a much more effective way. So in the end, it gets back to using the system for what it's designed for, but the difference is in the innovation management process, we've tied this all together. Now, from a feedback perspective, and this is a key step, and one that I think is leverages the same systems that we've had now. This idea sourcing system can also turn directly into your feedback system, or your capability to really go out and collect that information again and have a continuous process and analyze the data. And this actually ties into this concept of smart data. Again, we want to collect the feedback, the data, and use the analytics tools that we have that are engaged in this innovation management system to evaluate and look at the success of the product or the service, and refine that over time based on the direct feedback that we get from our customers and our partners. The people that are using the product, in other words, can really be directly involved in telling you it works, it doesn't work, here's why, how about doing this, let's fix it this way. All these things that you can actually do by engaging this whole population. I mentioned enterprise social networks, and this is a concept that we've been doing a lot of work with, and I'm frankly seeing a lot of companies engage with this idea that they're building a social network inside the company, and then from inside the company it generally extends out to and connects to the outside of the company. So in other words, can I take a tool that changes the way we do communications in our company and use that to get the broad population, first the population of employees, but then also connecting that out into the communities, the customer communities, the partner communities, and do it in a secure way. So we're not opening up your company to everybody and not opening up everything to everybody, but do it in a controlled way that lets you protect your own intellectual property, and do it in a secure way that lets you protect security, but at the same time you get this broader connectivity that really starts to leverage the whole population. So the enterprise social network becomes the backbone of what connects together, and frankly is a key part of the innovation process. Now, the idea sourcing tools and the community management tools are certainly different, and are today tools that exist standalone but can be integrated into that enterprise social network. So that's, it's evolving right now, but the connections are really going to be important. And then lastly, this idea of culture. And I talked about technology and process, and you can certainly, technology and process are extremely important, but at the same time, that's not the only thing that you have to deal with. So in other words, we're not just implementing new technology, we're not just changing a business process, but we're changing business culture. So you have to to think about this in an incremental way. So we're going to, implement systems, we're going to implement processes, but in the end, we've got to change the attitudes of employees and help them understand how they can work in a knowledge sharing culture versus a knowledge hoarding culture. And in today's environment, with the type of tools you have and the type of connectivity that you have, the days of power being driven by controlling information, those days are gone anyway. And if you think you can control that, it's just not going to happen, because today employees have all these different ways, unofficial ways, even ways that are typical public social network ways of connecting and sharing information. So that culture you have to build in and really help build an innovation culture, innovation focused culture, and help that drive the business forward. So just some things to consider as you're thinking about this. First of all, I mentioned this several times, it's an end-to-end process. It's supported by integrated systems. It's not just about the technology, and it's easy, I'm a technologist, so it's easy for me to get lost there, but that's not what I mean. The technology is really important, but it's not the point. The point is leveraging this power of crowdsourcing, unlocking all this distributed expertise, pulling that together through this power of community, and connecting that to your employees and into your innovation process, so that you can leverage all of those different groups that are really important and have a vested interest in the success of the company, and the fact that you want to engage them and get them engaged with your company. It just benefits from that power of community in the employees and in the partner community. And then, I've started to hear this term, and I wonder about this, this idea of having an executive owner. And in some businesses, I think this probably does make a lot of sense to think about a chief innovation officer, or, someone who has this responsibility. In some businesses, it's the CEO, of course, and maybe that's the right answer. It certainly has to be a person or a organization that can span the entire company and really start to look at this in a different way and help drive this culture change. And to change culture, you have to have a change management plan that really does, in fact, build off of successes and help people understand, new behaviors and learn new behaviors and learn new tools, so that you can get this ability to leverage all of this across this broad population. It's not something that's just going to happen, by itself. It's something that's going to need a plan and need to be pushed. That's why I say that innovation management process is a planned process that starts to be the lifeblood of the organization, and it's driven from the culture, and it's supported by the systems and the process. And then, aligning supporting elements to this as well. So, I deal with a lot of companies that talk about building a collaborative culture, and frankly, that's a very good thing, and I certainly agree with that. But often what happens is, if you dig a little deeper and you look at the company, you'll find out that the company is not set up to be a collaborative culture. In fact, it incents its employees to individual accomplishment. And if you do that, you're going to get the behavior that you incent. As much as you say you want people to collaborate, if you build compensation systems, reward systems, recognition systems that, it work exactly opposite, then you'll get the behavior that you're paying for. And this is a significant change in the organization. You really have to look, not just at process, technology, culture, but it also has to have all these other supporting elements in place to really do this effectively. So just a couple of things that I'll point you to. From an IDC perspective, if you go to IDC.com, we have a microsite off of the IDC.com site that has a few free research downloads that you can get that could help you look at a couple of things. One, this framework that you see up here that really is about how you would go about determining what to do first, how to pull all these pieces together, and how to manage that process. And then the second thing, we have an ROI white paper that we wrote last year that helps you look at the return on any investment in that technology, because this idea of innovation management, social business, these supporting structures and systems have to be tied to real value to the company. What am I going to get out of it? Am I going to get more revenue? Am I going to save money? Am I going to be more innovative or higher quality, whatever it is? So all those things tied together really let you manage that process more effectively, and certainly something that's very important from a business perspective to understand the return. So with that, I'm going to be quiet for a minute and then take some questions if you have any. So the question is, I said that integration between departments can now be seamless. Aren't you optimistic in this respect? I'm actually really optimistic, and no question that this is a real challenge, and I would never want to make this seem like an easy thing. And that's probably the biggest cultural hurdle that we've seen from an implementation standpoint when you talk about the enterprise social network, not even the full innovation process, but just the idea that we can use a different paradigm that moves into connecting all these different siloed departments. And I used to joke a lot that marketing and sales never talk, and that's a kind of a typical problem you see in a lot of companies, for example. But today we are actually starting to see this erode, and it's an interesting cultural shift as more and more companies start to think about collaboration across. And last year we built this maturity model for social business. And you see that companies, and it really is a continuum. Companies move from very disconnected and experimenting with these new kind of social tools through a phase when they really start to integrate and break down those silos. And then as they see the benefit from that, they start to drive across and optimize those and bring in more and more departments, and soon even connecting the inside and the outside and the outside and the inside. So it's definitely not easy. But it's something that companies that do this are, and frankly, in the survey, companies reported somewhere between 11 and 30% productivity gains when they got that enterprise social network operating effectively. And we've seen companies, get to 80, 90% adoption over an 18, 24-month period. So it's possible, but don't be naive. You're absolutely right. It's a change, cultural change, and it's not easy. And as Chris points out, don't ignore the fact that that we've had email that cuts across boundaries in a very simple way for a long time, and that's absolutely right. And that's a simple tool, and maybe a tool that some people get annoyed with because it's been perhaps used for things that it maybe wasn't designed perfectly for, but it has been reasonably effective in helping cut across boundaries. And if you take that and you add to that some of these newer collaborative tools that are in addition to email, because they don't replace email, in addition to email, help you connect in a more effective way, you can see a real shift over time. And particularly if you align your compensation, your rewards, your incentives to be a much more collaborative-based, team-based kind of approach.
Michael, I have a question for you. How do you see the evolution of email, to rebound on what Chris commented? I mean, a few years ago, Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook was predicting that email will disappear, and obviously we're seeing email or inbox solutions in all social networks directly. How do you see this going on?
Well, so that's actually a great thing. I wrote a white paper for IBM on this earlier this year. Actually, it was called "The Future of Email is Social," and that was based off a blog post I did last year around this idea that that email's problem is that it was too successful. It was the only collaborative tool that people used for a long time, and they used it for what it was designed for. And then they started to use it for things that it was never designed for. So, for example, email, what's it good at? It's really good for one-to-one or one-to-few secure communications. And those are really important. You have to have them. It's a standard. You can talk to any company that way. It's a great tool. But it's not a good tool for working together on a document, for example, because you have no way to do version control, you have no way to know who's got what, no way to lock the document down. There are much better tools for that. File sharing is not good for file sharing. It's not good for conversations. So, you know, the email thread that has 30 or 40 different, 30 or 40 different threads that run down the whole thing. That's just not useful anymore. So we can see the future of email really is that it becomes you take the burden away from it by implementing these other tools, and these tools over time merge so that we have email for what it's really good for, and perhaps in the same environment we have IM, and we have activity streams, and we have video chat, and we have all these things, and you can move between them fairly seamlessly depending on what you're trying to do. Now, we're not there yet, but we're starting to see this happen more and more because a lot of the tools are starting to have the capability to provide this connectivity. And frankly, I also think you're going to see social tools provide that connectivity down inside of the application. So, today you work in some system and you then go to an email client and you send an email and you go back to work in some system. Well, what if, for example, if you were a customer support rep and you need to ask a quick question of the sales team, wouldn't it be more effective to have a way to talk to that salesperson embedded right inside of your customer support console so you could do that really quickly? So I think that's, the next generation is how do we get these collaborative tools tied into the systems that we have across the business so that it's a part of the workflow. Because collaboration, social, all these things, they're not isolated. They don't happen in a separate layer. They really happen inside of your workflow, and I think that's very important.
All right. Thank you, Michael, for this excellent presentation. Very informative. Thanks a lot.
Sure. Thanks, Darius.